How do I make this larger? Sorry, everybody. All right, welcome to chapter 6 of our book. We just finished our section on race and racism. And now we're going to start talking about ethnicity and nationalism. Now, in the United States, we tend to conflate these two terms. Sometimes we ask somebody what their ethnic identity is, when really what we mean to ask is what their race is, oftentimes. But in anthropology, we think about all of these terms: race, ethnicity, and nationalism, nationhood, nationism, as being all separate. And so I'm going to go through these and try to differentiate them. We should have a pretty good handle at this point in the class in what we mean by race, what anthropologists mean by race. But let's talk about ethnicity. So ethnicity and race are definitely not the same. Ethnic is often paired with the term minority. We often say ethnic minority as a sort of PC way to talk about people who are not in the racial or cultural majority, as the case may be. So they're typically also smaller groups that are dominated by larger groups. They could be dominated linguistically, culturally, food, dress, history, religion. And so ethnicity is a culture. It is cultural. You can have one racial category but be ethnically a different group of people, and your nationalism, your national identity, could be even with another group. So these things can vary independently. Oftentimes, though, when what we're talking about with ethnicity is it's a position of power, like we learned about with globalization, talking about McDonald's and tradition and who gets to decide what is important, who gets to decide what group of people are the ethnic minority and what group of people are the ethnic majority. So ethnicity ignores the identity of the majority. When we say ethnic minority, it's sort of implying that the majority are not also an ethnicity. When I was teaching at Michigan State University, it wasn't a very diverse campus, for example, and so when I taught them, I had to kind of convince students that actually their ethnicity, that is white middle class primarily, people from rural parts of Michigan, that they had ethnicity, that they had their own language, culture, food, dress, history, and religion that was specific to them. And I had to convince them that not everybody in the world knows what cornhole is, and people don't know what tailgating is, and that they actually have their own culture. So when we talk about ethnicity, oftentimes we're dismissing the fact that we have our own ethnic identity, and what we're really talking about is ethnic minorities, people who have different language, culture, food, dress, history, religion, like I keep saying, than whatever it is that is the dominant group of people. And so we can think about this in terms of the grocery store a little bit. I always think about, that's when I see the word ethnicity sort of misused oftentimes. So I'd like you to take a second and imagine, what kind of foods do you find at the grocery store in the ethnic food aisle? When you go to the ethnic food aisle, what kind of foods are there? And also, by the same token, what kind of foods do you find in the aisles that do not have ethnic food? In the other parts of the grocery store, what kind of foods exist? And I don't know, do those categories make much sense to you? So this gets us to talking a little bit about identity more broadly. Now, in this class, we're going to talk about lots of different kinds of identities. Humans develop many complex identities that connect to many people and places over our lifetimes. Humans build a sense of relationship, belonging, and shared identity through connections to not only their nation, not only their ethnic group, their race, but also family, religion, hometown, language, shared history, citizenship, sports, age, gender, sexuality, education, profession, and many, many other examples. So no particular person is a monolith and their identity is just based on their religion or just based on their nation of origin or any of these other concepts that we tend to give supremacy to. We are all this sort of kaleidoscope of different kinds of identities. And we're going to be talking about the intersection of a lot of those identities in this class a little bit later. But right now we're just talking about ethnicity and nationalism. So which identities do you identify with? Try to come up with 2 or 3 that you are comfortable with sharing. And I'm not going to be the only ones that read this, so you're welcome to. But many people from Dayton have their own specific identities. There are things that people in Dayton know about, people in Cincinnati. Often people in Cincinnati and this area are very proud of their chili, for example. Skyline chili is something that being a Californian, I've never heard of. I certainly never heard of it when I was living in Michigan or Chicago. So one of the ways that we identify place is through food. I've got these images here. A lot of people identify with their place of origin, as we were talking about in our last class about race. My family is Irish, my family is Welsh, my family is from someplace in Africa, my family's from someplace in Latin America, all these different kinds of identities. So try to think of 2 or 3 identities. It doesn't have to be food or religion or place, but any of these identities you could think of. Try to find 2 that you're comfortable sharing.